Mexico's economic history is deeply rooted in its pre-colonial and colonial past, where agriculture, mining, and trade were the main drivers of economic activity. Before the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century, indigenous civilizations like the Aztecs and Mayans developed advanced agricultural systems and trade networks. The Aztecs, for instance, maintained extensive market systems in Tenochtitlan, facilitating trade in goods like maize, beans, and precious stones. With the Spanish conquest, Mexico's economy was reshaped to serve colonial interests, particularly through the extraction of silver, which became a major export to Europe. Colonial Mexico's economic structure was characterized by large estates known as haciendas and a highly unequal distribution of wealth, laying the foundation for persistent inequality in the centuries that followed. Following Mexico's independence from Spain in 1821, the newly formed nation faced a series of economic challenges, including political instability, foreign debt, and a lack of cohesive economic policy. Early economic policies were largely shaped by liberal and conservative factions, which debated the role of foreign investment and protectionism in Mexico's development. In the 19th century, under President Porfirio Díaz, Mexico experienced rapid modernization and industrialization, largely driven by foreign capital, particularly from the United States and Europe. Infrastructure projects, such as railways and telecommunications, began to modernize the economy, while the expansion of industries like mining and textiles positioned Mexico as an emerging economic power. However, the benefits of these developments were unevenly distributed, and economic inequality contributed to social unrest, culminating in the Mexican Revolution, 1910 to 1920. The 20th century saw significant shifts in Mexico's economic trajectory, particularly after the revolution. The government adopted a more interventionist approach to the economy, implementing policies that focused on land reform, labor rights, and nationalization of key industries, such as oil under Pemex in 1938. The period between the 1940s and 1970s, known as the Mexican Miracle, was marked by high economic growth rates, averaging over 6% annually, driven by industrialization and import substitution policies. During this time, Mexico became one of the largest industrial economies in Latin America, with sectors such as manufacturing, construction, and agriculture contributing to its GDP. However, the oil crisis in the 1980s and subsequent debt crisis led to a shift towards neoliberal policies, including trade liberalization and privatization, which opened the economy to global markets but also exposed it to external shocks. Today, Mexico's historical economic challenges, such as inequality and dependence on foreign capital, continue to influence its development path. Mexico's agricultural sector remains an essential component of its economy, contributing around 3.4% to its GDP in 2022, according to data from the World Bank. Agriculture provides livelihoods for nearly 12% of Mexico's labor force, particularly in rural areas. Key agricultural products include maize, avocados, tomatoes, and chili peppers, all of which are major exports to international markets, especially the United States. Mexico is the world's largest exporter of avocados, with the state of Michoacán producing 80% of the country's total output. Despite its significance, the agricultural sector faces challenges such as low productivity, lack of access to advanced technology, and vulnerability to climate change. These factors create disparities between large agribusinesses and smallholder farms, with the latter often struggling to remain competitive in global markets. The manufacturing sector is the backbone of Mexico's economy, accounting for over 17% of the country's GDP in 2023. Mexico has positioned itself as a global manufacturing hub, particularly in the automotive, electronics, and aerospace industries. The automotive industry, one of the country's largest export sectors, represents 20% of Mexico's total manufacturing output, with major global companies such as General Motors, Ford, and Volkswagen operating large plants in states like Guanajuato and Puebla. Mexico's strategic location, close proximity to the United States, and participation in trade agreements such as the USMCA have made it an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, FDI. However, the manufacturing sector is also facing increasing pressure from rising labor costs and the need for further automation and technological advancement to stay competitive. The energy and natural resources sector in Mexico is another critical component of the economy, driven primarily by the country's abundant oil reserves. Pemex, the state-owned oil company, has historically been a key player, and oil continues to be a major export despite a decline in production in recent years. As of 2022, Mexico produced approximately 1.7 million barrels of oil per day, down from its peak of 3.4 million barrels in 2004. In response to declining oil output, the Mexican government has prioritized the development of renewable energy, aiming to generate 35% of its energy from renewable sources by 2024. Wind, solar, and geothermal energy are areas of growing investment, particularly in regions like Oaxaca and Baja California. Additionally, the country is expanding its natural gas infrastructure to reduce its reliance on oil and increase energy security, as Mexico currently imports around 70% of its natural gas from the United States. The services and tourism sector has emerged as one of the fastest-growing areas of the Mexican economy, contributing over 60% of GDP in 2023. Tourism, in particular, plays a vital role, with Mexico ranking as one of the top 10 most visited countries in the world. The country's diverse landscape, rich cultural heritage, and coastal resorts like Cancun and Cabo San Lucas attract millions of tourists annually. In 2022, the tourism sector generated approximately $29 billion in revenue, highlighting its significance to the economy. Mexico's service sector is also broadening into financial services, telecommunications, and outsourcing, with cities like Monterrey and Guadalajara becoming key hubs for tech innovation. Despite its growth, the services sector faces challenges such as improving infrastructure, ensuring sustainable tourism development, and addressing social inequalities within service-based industries. Mexico's trade relations have been fundamentally shaped by its participation in regional and global trade agreements, particularly the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which was renegotiated and replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, in 2020. The USMCA has maintained many of the core benefits of NAFTA while modernizing provisions related to digital trade, labor standards, and environmental protections. Under NAFTA, Mexico experienced a significant increase in exports to the United States and Canada, growing from $60 billion in 1994 to over $400 billion by 2020. The USMCA has solidified Mexico's role as a key manufacturing and export hub in North America, particularly in the automotive and electronics industries. In 2023, the United States remained Mexico's largest trading partner, accounting for approximately 76% of its total exports, further emphasizing the critical role of this partnership in the Mexican economy. Beyond North America, Mexico has established a wide array of trade agreements, making it one of the most globally connected economies. Mexico is a member of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, which has opened up new markets in the Asia-Pacific region, particularly in countries like Japan, Australia, and Vietnam. Additionally, Mexico has free trade agreements, FTAs, with the European Union, creating opportunities for exports of goods such as automotive parts, electronics, and agricultural products. In 2022, Mexico's trade with the European Union amounted to over $75 billion, with Germany being the largest European trading partner. These agreements allow Mexico to diversify its trading relationships and reduce its dependence on the United States, although the proximity and volume of U.S.-Mexico trade continue to dominate Mexico's export economy. Foreign direct investment, FDI, has played a pivotal role in Mexico's economic development, particularly in sectors like manufacturing, energy, and technology. In 2022, Mexico attracted over $35 billion in FDI, with the majority coming from the United States, followed by Spain, Canada, and Germany. FDI has been instrumental in fostering industrial growth, particularly in the automotive, electronics, and aerospace sectors, where foreign companies have established major production facilities. Mexico's investment climate has been supported by its vast network of trade agreements, low labor costs, and geographical advantages. However, challenges remain, such as regulatory uncertainties and the need for improvements in infrastructure. The government has also sought to encourage more investment in renewable energy and technology sectors as part of its strategy to diversify the economy. With FDI continuing to flow into Mexico, it remains a crucial element for maintaining competitiveness and driving economic growth in the coming years. Mexico's labor market is characterized by a young and growing workforce, with a median age of around 29 years, according to 2023 data from Mexico's National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI. The country has a labor force participation rate of approximately 60%, with men making up the majority of the formal labor force, although female participation has been steadily increasing. In 2023, women represented around 45% of the workforce, with notable growth in sectors like services, education, and healthcare. Despite this progress, significant gender disparities remain, particularly in terms of wages and job opportunities. The Mexican labor market is also geographically divided, with urban centers like Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara offering more formal employment opportunities, while rural areas tend to have higher levels of informal employment and agricultural work. Unemployment in Mexico has remained relatively low, standing at around 3% in 2023, according to INEGI. However, these figures mask a significant informal sector, which continues to be a major component of the labor market. Approximately 56% of the workforce is employed informally, meaning they work without formal contracts, benefits, or social security. Informal employment is prevalent in sectors like agriculture, construction, and street vending, and it disproportionately affects women and younger workers. This segment of the labor market poses challenges for economic stability, as informal workers typically earn lower wages, lack job security, and are excluded from government-provided social benefits. The persistence of informal employment highlights the need for policies aimed at formalizing the labor market and expanding social protections for vulnerable workers. Wage trends in Mexico reflect a complex picture of gradual growth, coupled with persistent income inequality. The national minimum wage has seen incremental increases in recent years, reaching 207.44 pesos per day, about $10.30, in 2023, a significant rise from previous years as part of government efforts to improve living standards. Despite this, wage growth has been uneven across sectors and regions. Workers in urban, industrialized areas tend to earn significantly higher wages compared to those in rural or agricultural sectors. Income inequality remains a prominent issue in Mexico, with the top 10% of the population earning roughly 30 times more than the bottom 10%. Efforts to reduce inequality have been a priority for the government, but disparities persist, exacerbated by factors like access to education, labor market informality, and regional economic disparities. Addressing these inequalities is critical to ensuring more inclusive economic growth and reducing poverty levels across the country. The Central Bank of Mexico, or Banco de Mexico, plays a crucial role in shaping the country's monetary policy, with its primary mandate being to maintain price stability and control inflation. The bank operates independently of the government, giving it the authority to adjust interest rates and intervene in the financial markets as necessary to achieve its objectives. In recent years, Banco de Mexico has focused on managing inflation within a target range of 3%, allowing for fluctuations of 1 percentage point above or below this benchmark. The central bank's monetary policy decisions are also influenced by external factors, such as global economic conditions, the performance of the Mexican peso, and changes in the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rates. Given the close economic ties between Mexico and the United States, as of 2023, the central bank has maintained a cautious approach, balancing the need to support economic growth while controlling inflationary pressures. Inflation has been a persistent concern for Mexico, with inflation rates fluctuating between 4% and 8% over the past few years, driven by factors such as rising energy costs, global supply chain disruptions, and domestic price pressures. By mid-2023, inflation stood at around 5.6%, according to Banco de Mexico, exceeding the central bank's target range. In response, the central bank raised its benchmark interest rate to 11.25% in an effort to curb inflation and stabilize prices. The elevated interest rates aim to reduce consumer spending and borrowing, ultimately cooling inflationary pressures. However, these higher rates have also increased borrowing costs for businesses and households, which could slow economic growth in certain sectors. The central bank remains vigilant, closely monitoring both domestic and global economic conditions to adjust its policies as needed to maintain stability. Mexico's financial markets have experienced steady growth in recent years, supported by a robust banking sector, improved regulatory frameworks, and an expanding pool of domestic and foreign investors. The Mexican Stock Exchange, Bolsa Mexicana de Valores, has attracted significant attention from international investors, particularly in sectors such as energy, technology, and consumer goods. In 2022, foreign investment in the stock market reached approximately $15 billion, highlighting Mexico's appeal as an emerging market. The banking sector, dominated by both local and international players, has remained relatively stable, with banks maintaining strong capital reserves and low levels of non-performing loans. Financial inclusion has been a key focus for Mexico, as around 45% of the adult population remains unbanked, according to the World Bank. Efforts to expand access to financial services, including digital banking and fintech innovations, are helping to bring more of the population into the formal financial system, contributing to broader economic growth. Mexico's fiscal policy is largely driven by its taxation system, which remains a key source of government revenue but faces challenges related to collection efficiency and a narrow tax base. In 2023, tax revenue represented around 16% of the country's GDP, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, which is below the average for Latin American economies. Mexico's taxation system relies heavily on value-added tax, VAT, and income tax, but the country has struggled with issues such as tax evasion, informality, and low compliance rates. While the government has made efforts to improve tax collection and widen the base, particularly through digitalization and reforms aimed at cracking down on evasion, Mexico's informal economy still limits the effectiveness of these measures. Expanding the formal tax base and improving revenue collection remains central to Mexico's fiscal strategy to ensure stable public finances. Public debt management is a crucial aspect of Mexico's fiscal policy, as the country has maintained a moderate level of debt relative to its GDP. As of 2023, Mexico's public debt stood at approximately 49.5% of GDP, a figure that has remained relatively stable in recent years, according to data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The Mexican government has adopted a cautious approach to borrowing, aiming to avoid excessive debt accumulation while maintaining fiscal discipline. However, servicing the national debt remains a significant expense, with interest payments representing a notable portion of government spending. To manage the fiscal deficit, the government has implemented austerity measures in certain areas, while seeking to boost economic growth to increase revenue. The fiscal deficit has been kept under control, projected at around 3.5% of GDP for 2023, reflecting the government's commitment to maintaining macroeconomic stability. Government spending in Mexico is prioritized toward social programs, infrastructure development, and economic stimulus, with a particular focus on reducing poverty and inequality. Social spending on programs such as pensions, healthcare, and education continues to be a priority, with efforts to expand coverage and improve service delivery. In 2023, the government allocated around 40% of its budget to social programs, reflecting its emphasis on addressing poverty and enhancing social welfare. Infrastructure investment is another key area of focus, with projects aimed at improving transportation, energy, and digital connectivity, particularly in underserved regions. The administration has also prioritized flagship projects such as the Mayan Train and the Dos Bocas oil refinery, which are intended to boost regional development and energy security. Balancing these spending priorities with the need for fiscal sustainability remains a challenge as the government seeks to stimulate economic growth while managing its public finances responsibly. One of the most persistent challenges facing the Mexican economy is income inequality and poverty. Despite being the 15th largest economy in the world, Mexico has struggled to ensure equitable wealth distribution among its population. In 2023, data from the World Bank indicated that nearly 40% of Mexicans live below the poverty line, with rural areas suffering more significantly than urban regions. The wealth gap remains stark, with the richest 10% of the population controlling almost half of the nation's total wealth, while the poorest 50% share less than 10%. These disparities are linked to several structural issues, including limited access to quality education, healthcare, and social services, particularly in rural and indigenous communities. Efforts to reduce poverty have included social welfare programs, but income inequality continues to be a barrier to sustained, inclusive economic growth, and more targeted policies are needed to address the root causes of inequality. Corruption and governance issues also represent significant obstacles to Mexico's economic development. Transparency International's 2022 Corruption Perceptions Index ranked Mexico 126th out of 180 countries, reflecting the deep-rooted corruption that affects both public and private sectors. Corruption erodes trust in institutions, stifles business growth, and leads to inefficiencies in public spending and service delivery. Major infrastructure projects and public procurement processes are often marred by allegations of bribery and favoritism, which can deter foreign investment and hinder long-term development. Although the Mexican government has made high-profile efforts to combat corruption, including creating an anti-corruption system and increasing transparency in government contracts, progress has been slow. Strengthening the rule of law, ensuring accountability, and building a more robust legal framework are necessary to reduce corruption and improve governance in Mexico. Environmental sustainability and climate change present additional challenges to Mexico's economic future. Mexico is highly vulnerable to climate-related risks, including rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and water scarcity. In 2023, the World Resources Institute identified Mexico as one of the countries with the highest water stress, with regions like northern Mexico experiencing severe droughts that threaten agricultural productivity and livelihoods. Deforestation, pollution, and over-reliance on fossil fuels also exacerbate environmental degradation. While Mexico has committed to generating 35% of its energy from renewable sources by 2024, progress has been slow, and the country continues to rely heavily on oil production. Balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability requires a comprehensive strategy that encourages investment in green technologies, promotes sustainable agricultural practices, and addresses the impacts of climate change on vulnerable communities. This will be key to ensuring long-term resilience and stability. The social and economic effects of drug cartels further compound the challenges facing Mexico's economy. The illicit drug trade has not only fueled violence, but has also had profound economic impacts, particularly in regions heavily affected by cartel activity. Drug-related violence destabilizes local economies, deters investment, and disrupts tourism, a critical sector for Mexico. According to the Mexican government, over 36,000 homicides were reported in 2022, many of them linked to organized crime. The presence of drug cartels creates a climate of insecurity that makes it difficult for businesses to operate and for local governments to implement development projects. In addition, drug cartels often infiltrate legitimate businesses and local economies, distorting competition and creating an uneven playing field. Tackling the influence of drug cartels requires not only stronger law enforcement, but also socio-economic programs that provide alternative livelihoods and address the underlying causes of crime and violence, such as poverty and lack of opportunity. Mexico's future economic growth is increasingly tied to its capacity for innovation and technology. In recent years, the country has made significant strides in developing its technology sector, particularly in areas such as fintech, software development, and telecommunications. Guadalajara, often referred to as Mexico's Silicon Valley, has become a hub for tech startups, attracting talent and investment both domestically and internationally. The government has also supported innovation through initiatives such as USMCA, National Council for Science and Technology, which funds research and development projects. In 2022, Mexico's tech industry grew by approximately 8%, with significant contributions from artificial intelligence, AI, blockchain technology, and mobile application development. However, to fully leverage these opportunities, Mexico needs to address challenges such as limited internet penetration in rural areas and the need for greater investment in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Education to produce a workforce equipped for the demands of a digital economy. Mexico's commitment to renewable energy and sustainability initiatives presents another significant opportunity for future growth. As global demand for clean energy increases, Mexico has positioned itself as a leader in renewable energy development, particularly in wind and solar power. In 2023, renewable energy accounted for nearly 30% of the country's electricity generation, with an ambitious goal to reach 35% by 2024. The Isthmus of Tehuantepec in Oaxaca, for example, is home to some of the largest wind farms in Latin America. Solar energy is also expanding rapidly, with projects in Baja California and Chihuahua taking advantage of the country's abundant sunlight. Additionally, Mexico has set targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase energy efficiency as part of its national climate change strategy. These efforts not only align with global sustainability trends, but also offer economic opportunities through job creation, energy security, and attracting foreign investment in green technology sectors. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, play a crucial role in driving Mexico's economic development and represent a vital engine for future growth. SMEs account for over 99% of all businesses in Mexico and provide around 70% of employment, according to data from the Ministry of Economy. These enterprises are especially important in sectors like manufacturing, retail, and services, and their success is closely tied to the overall health of the Mexican economy. In recent years, the government has introduced several programs to support SME growth, such as offering access to credit, reducing bureaucratic barriers, and providing training programs for entrepreneurs. The rise of digital platforms and e-commerce has also opened new opportunities for SMEs, enabling them to reach larger markets both domestically and internationally. However, challenges remain, including access to financing and the need for improved business infrastructure. By addressing these issues, Mexico can further harness the potential of SMEs to stimulate innovation, job creation, and economic diversification.